Tonight I bring you a story that will freeze the blood in your veins, a tale of horror so deep that it will haunt your darkest nightmares. In the ancient lands of the Carpathians, where mountains rise like black fangs against an eternally gray sky, a monster was born who would make even demons retreat in horror. This is the story of Vlad Dracula, the Impaler, a man who transformed the art of torture into a macabre symphony of suffering. The year 1431 dawned with sinister omens. The elders whispered about a rain of blood that fell upon Sigishora Castle the night Vlad came into the world. Wolves howled in chorus from the depths of the forest, and ravens gathered by the thousands upon the castle towers, their caws like an anticipated requiem for the souls this child would claim. From his earliest childhood, fate wove for Vlad a web of horrors that would mold his soul into something monstrous. His father, Vlad II, member of the Order of the Dragon, was known for his cruelty. The castle servants whispered stories about the tortures he performed in the cellars, about the screams heard on moonless nights. But the true descent into madness began when, at age 11, Vlad and his brother Radu were given as hostages to Sultan Murad II. The Ottoman dungeons were a labyrinth of nightmares where death was the least of evils. For years, the young prince witnessed horrors that defied imagination. The Ottoman executioners were masters in the art of suffering. Vlad observed how they extracted organs from prisoners while they remained conscious, how they inserted needles under nails until reaching bone, how they slowly flayed their victims layer by layer of skin. Each night, the screams of the tortured were his lullaby. Each dawn brought new horrors to engrave in his young and malleable mind. During his captivity, Vlad developed a morbid fascination with human anatomy. He studied with scientific attention how bodies responded to pain, how much they could endure before breaking, which precise points caused the greatest suffering. This macabre knowledge would later become the foundation of his own innovations in the art of torture. When he finally ascended to the throne of Wallachia, Vlad had perfected his own methods of torment that would surpass even the nightmares of his former captors. His first act of revenge, the infamous Easter banquet, was merely a prelude to the horrors to come. At that fateful banquet, Vlad did not just impale the treacherous nobles. Before their death, he forced them to dig their own graves while their families watched. He forced the wives to eat pieces of their still-living husbands. The children were forced to witness everything before being impaled themselves on smaller stakes specially designed for their tiny bodies. Ponari Castle became a monument to horror. The nobles condemned to build it did not just work until death. Vlad designed a system of progressive torture. Each day before work began, he would tear out a nail. When the nails were gone, the fingers followed. Those who survived long enough ended up building with bloody stumps, their screams mixing with the sound of stones being placed. The mass impalement sessions were elaborately choreographed events. Vlad designed different types of stakes for different types of death. Some were blunt and oiled, allowing the body to slide slowly down over days. Others had lateral spikes that tore internal organs with every movement of the victim. The most terrible were designed to split the spine without killing, keeping the victim conscious during endless agony. On special occasions, Vlad ordered the creation of human trees. Victims were impaled on stakes of different heights, arranged in the form of a tree. Children occupied the highest branches, their parents the intermediate ones, and the elderly the lowest. These macabre trees could hold up to 50 people, all dying slowly in a horrible hierarchy of pain. His torture methods went beyond impalement. He developed what he called the Garden of Pain, where he experimented with different forms of suffering. Some victims were buried up to their necks and covered in honey, leaving insects to devour them slowly. Others were flayed in parts, kept alive while their skin was removed centimeter by centimeter. One of his most elaborate tortures involved what he called the eternal banquet. Victims were tied to a table and forced to eat their own flesh, which was cut and cooked in front of them. Those who refused to eat were force-fed with the flesh of their fellow captives. During winter, Vlad perfected the art of controlled freezing. He would strip his victims and spray them with water at precise intervals, creating layers of ice that slowly formed over their skin. He kept fires nearby to ensure they would not die too quickly, prolonging their agony for entire days. The forest of death he created to receive the Ottoman army was his masterpiece of horror. The 20,000 impaled were not arranged randomly. Vlad created a labyrinth of death, with corridors formed by rows of agonizing bodies. Ottoman soldiers who tried to traverse it became lost among the moans and stench, some going mad at the spectacle of thousands of faces contorted in eternal agony. At night, Vlad would walk among his impaled victims with torches, conversing with the dying. He would ask questions about their pain, take meticulous notes about how long they took to die according to the position and type of stake. Sometimes he would order the stakes slightly moved just to prolong the suffering. His experiments with human pain reached levels of scientific precision. He kept detailed records of each method of torture, noting the duration of agony, the specific sounds victims made, even the patterns of bleeding. These macabre documents, known as the Red Notebooks, disappeared after his death, though some say they still exist, hidden in some secret library. The terror he inspired was so profound, it even affected the surrounding nature. Birds stopped singing in the forests near his castle. Wolves avoided the areas where he conducted his mass executions. It is said the earth itself became sterile in places where the blood of his victims had soaked the soil. Local legends speak of how, on moonless nights, Vlad performed dark rituals with the blood of his victims. Some witnesses swore they saw him drinking blood directly from impaled bodies while reciting incantations in forgotten languages. Others claimed his shadow moved independently of his body, as if it had a life of its own. After his violent death in 1476, the horrors did not cease. The inhabitants of the region reported inexplicable phenomena around his supposed tomb. Ghostly lights dancing among the ruins of his castle, screams that seemed to emerge from the depths of the earth, and apparitions of impaled figures that vanished with the dawn light. Today, in the Carpathian Mountains, the elderly still warn their grandchildren about going out on new moon nights. They say that is when the spirit of Vlad roams the forests, seeking new victims for his endless feast of horror. Hunters occasionally find trees stained red deep in the forest, and no one dares to investigate whether the stains are sap or something more sinister. Most disturbing of all is that some of his torture methods continue to be discovered. Recently found historical documents reveal even more horrifying techniques than those known. Lost pages of his legendary red notebooks occasionally appear in dark antique auctions, their pages stained with an oxidized red that some swear is blood. The legacy of Vlad the Impaler reminds us that true monsters need no fangs or supernatural powers. The deepest horror is born from the human mind, from that infinite capacity for cruelty that we all carry within. On dark nights, when the wind blows from the Carpathians, some swear they can hear his laughter echoing among the mountains, an eternal reminder that true evil never really dies. It only waits patiently in the shadows.